Ros, talk us through what we saw. There were protests in London last night. I saw them next to where I live in North London. But the vast majority were protesting against these far-right racist groups who, of course, have been rioting and trashing parts of the UK. Far outnumbered, generally peaceful, at least in my neighbourhood. What transpired across the country?
Well, that's right. So they came out because, in fact, what we're expecting were these far-right groups to again come out to demonstrate in different parts of the country. We're expecting about 100 sites for them to do so. As you say, there's been riots in the UK over the past week, some of them quite violent by these groups, very destructive of property and so on. And what we saw is, in fact, the counter-movement outweighed the movement in the end. Thousands of people coming out to say this doesn't represent who we are in the UK, protecting property. You saw police out in great force as well. So, in fact, it was more police and more sort of anti-racism protesters than far-right protesters themselves. We saw only very, very small pockets of them in several places, a couple of scuffles, say in Croydon, in the south of London, for example, a few arrests, but nothing at all. In fact, it just all sort of fizzled out. And so the question is really, where does it go from here? Is this movement now quiet? Has Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, want a respite from it with his very, very tough approach? He's been fast-tracking people through the courts very quickly, making it, very clear to them they're going to potentially face jail, and that could be very, very fast indeed. He's got experience, of course, with riots before, as we know.
That experience seems to be coming through, doesn't it, with a number of names being jailed just in the last day or so, maybe sending that message then to these rioters. Is it a reprieve? Do you think this is it then? Have we got through the worst of this? What's the assessment?
Well, is the reprieve for now, but is it really over? Because even if these riots end, there's the challenge more broadly for the Prime Minister, for society really, that there are these movements in the UK. There are people who've been feeling very aggrieved about migration for whatever reason for years, partly through the Brexit process, but certainly there's a strong undercurrent of this in the UK. So structurally, how do you deal with that, even if people aren't out on the street and rioting? And also this movement's quite nebulous. There's no real leadership. They're sort of gathering through, social media and very quickly. So that's not to say they're not going to pop up somewhere else, perhaps in the coming days or on the weekend again. This was something that, police knew was coming and were out in force ready to prevent. We don't know, will they come again at some point? But either way, even if we don't see big riots in the UK, the fundamental questions of what this is doing to society and what it means for the UK, those remain.